Hello students, myself Professor Hardika Meghani from Aditya Silver Oak Institute of Technology, Computer Engineering Department, Silver Oak University. So today we will be going through a topic of decision structures from Python programming. So when we talk about decision structures in Python programming, what does decision structure mean? So these are the topics we'll be going through in this particular video. Introduction to decision structures in Python, the if statements, the if else statements, nested if else statements, and the if elif statements. So what is basically decision structure in Python programming? What do you mean by decision structure in Python programming? So in any programming language, when you need to perform a task that is based on certain condition, then you need to have some structure that would help you to define what particular part of the program or what particular path of the program is to be followed to perform this particular format. When certain condition is true, what you have to perform, and when certain condition goes false, what should be the output. Let's take an example over here to understand it very clearly. For example, consider that you have to give the answer in true or false. Supposingly you are right, then you need to give the answer 1, that is true. And if you are wrong, you need to give the answer 0, that is false. On the basis of that, you will be getting the respective points. In this particular case, to execute this whole program, where if your answer is right, you get 1 point, and if your answer is wrong, you get 0 point, you need to use the decision structures to create the whole program. Thus, we can say that the decision structures are required when we want to execute a code only if certain condition is being satisfied. So let's moving further with it. These are the different decision structures that are there in Python. If statements, if else statements, nested if statements, if elif statements. We will go through each of them in detail. If statements. So here is our syntax of if statements. Simple if statement says that if my certain condition is true, I will execute these particular statements. Here we have given an flow chart for the same, that once you enter, you check the condition. If the condition is true, you will be going and performing a certain block of statements. If it is false, you will directly get exited and you will be performing the X statements that are the remaining statements. If the condition is true, you will be performing a certain block of statements that are predefined, and then you will be going to the remaining statements. Let's see with an example. So here we have taken an example for the same. So this is our if statement, that we have taken A as an input from the user, B as an input from the user, and we are checking that if A greater than B is possible or not. If A is greater than B, then print A greater than B. So we will be performing this into our particular program. So here we have taken Google Colabs to perform the particular Python program. You can also perform it through different IDs like PyCharm. Okay, so A is equal to, we will be having integer input. So we will be placing integer input statement to get the value of A from the user. Enter A. In Python, you do not need to specifically declare the variables previously. You can directly use them. Enter B. We have taken both the values from the user. Now our if statement, if A is greater than B. After if statement, you are supposed to place the colon sign. And in Python, indentation is important. There are no brackets in Python. So to show that the particular line is inside the if statement, you need to have one tab space for the indentation. We will be printing A is greater than B. Now we will be running the program. So we entered the value of A as 10. We entered the value of B as 20. It didn't give me any output. Okay. Why? Because we have given a statement that would show that if A is greater than B, then what task is to be done? We haven't shown that if B is greater than A, then what is to be done? Let's see first if A is greater than B. A is 20, B is 10, then it will print A is greater than B. Now, what to do if B is greater than A? There should be some task that is to be performed. So here comes into the picture the else statement. If else, when I place else, that means if in the case that we previously saw that B was 20 and A was 10, then A is not greater than B. So the if condition is false. So it won't be executing the statement in the if condition. So then what it would be executing? It would be executing the else portion, that B is greater than A. Let's run the code. I have just placed this so that the output becomes better. There is no any other reason of placing the colon in the input statement. In this case, you can see A is 10, B is 20. Previously, when we saw this, we were not getting any output as there was no else statement. But now we have placed the else statement. So we can see that B is greater than A. So now moving back to our remaining presentation, here is the if else statement flowchart. The if else statement which I show you in the program. The condition comes, you check whether it is true or false. On the basis of that, the remaining true statements or the remaining false statements have been executed. The false portion statements goes in the else part. The true portion statements goes in the if part. Here is the same example. Now, nested if. When I use the word nested, nested means when you are trying to use the if statement into another if statement as and when required. So what we can say, if or if else of if or if elif statements inside the another statement is called nesting of the if else statement. Here you can see I have taken one if condition. Into that, I have taken another if else condition to perform, and then I have taken the else portion of the main if block. So one condition, if that condition goes true, then another condition, and on the basis of that, we will get the output. Let's understand with the example. Supposingly, you have to find the greater out of the three values. We previously did the example where we had to find the greater out of the two values. So let's perform it. So now we have the third value also c. C is equal to integer input, enter c. Now we have entered the value of c. Here what we do, we check whether a is greater than b. Now if a is greater than b, we are trying to check whether a is greater than c or not. So we are trying to find the largest out of 3. So if a is greater than b and a is greater than c, then and then we can say that a is the greatest number. Okay, so here we cannot say just that if A is greater than B, then A is greatest. We have to check it with C also. So first stage of comparison was whether A is greater than B or not. If yes, then again we need to compare that if A is greater than C or not. Here we need the nested looping. The nested statements of decisions are needed over here. Now if A is not greater than C, then what? If A is not greater than C, then print C is the greatest. Because we have already tested for B that whether B is greater or not. B is not greater than A. Then B cannot be the greatest. Now we compared that A. We have A as the greater number. So we compared A with C. If A was greater, then A is the greatest of all the 3. Now if A is not greater than C, then automatically C becomes the greatest of all the 3. Now supposingly, when we are talking about this if statement, here only we come to know that A is not greater than B. That means the B is greater. So here we have the else statement. The same block of code will run for the else statement. Let's place the code over here. The same block of code is running for else statement. Just the difference, instead of A, we will be comparing B with C, that whether B is greater than C or not. If yes, then the B is greatest, else again the C is greatest. Let's run the code. Value of A is 10, B is 20, C is 30, C is the greatest. Again value of A is 20, B is 10, C is 5. So A is the greatest number. Again we'll check for B. A is 5, B is 10, C is 7. So B is the greatest. So this is how my particular nested if else statements work. Now moving further, the if elif statement. The if elif statement is similar to the else if ladder that we used to tell in the other programming language. Here else if has been shortened to elif. If elif. Okay, so we are checking if this, then this particular statement, else if this, then this particular statement, else if this, then this particular statement. So here is the example for it, that supposingly you have to find whether the number is 0, greater than 0 or less than 0. So here 2 times you need to go for else if statement, and then you have to go for the else statement. So in this condition we use elif. Let's perform the example, that supposingly we have to just take A as an input from the user. What we need to check is if A is greater than 0, then what will be printed? Print A is positive. Now we have to check if A is equal to 0 or not. So we cannot directly go on else statement. So we come with the example, the conclusion of elif, that if A is if A is equal to 0, then we will print 0. Now we have checked both the condition, so the remaining goes in the else statement, which is run by default, that it is negative. That if A is not greater than 0, if A is not equal to 1, then by default A is negative. So let's run it. Suppose A is 10. So A is positive. Suppose I add minus 10. So it is neither greater than 0 nor 0. So A is negative. And now supposingly I enter the value of A as 0. So A is 0. If I want to check that whether the number is 1 or not, I just need to add one more elif statement before else, and that is elif A is equal to 1, printf 1, run the code, value of A1. Here in this case you can see that it will by default go and check the first one, because A is greater than 0 also. So it went and run the first condition. Once this condition is true, it won't go to the next conditions of the elif statements. Once this condition is true, it won't go to the another conditions of elif statements. So if there is some case like this where the digit can come into the two conditions that are true, but you want to specifically have a certain output, then that is to be placed in the first if statement, and then you can change the remaining portion. Okay, so this is how the if elif statement works. Thank you so much. I hope that your clarity about the decision structure in the Python would be done by this particular end of the topic. Thank you.